Dexter Morgan is back, baby! The serial killer with a sometimes tenuous set of rules is set to return to screens with a new limited series on Showtime. And with that return comes a big ol' list of questions we just need answered, y'all. With original showrunner Clyde Phillips returning and the promise of a strict 10-episode limited series, not to mention plenty of time since the finale for all, issues to be considered and addressed, the prospect of one last season of Dexter to right the ship is very appealing. All we know is that it takes place 10 years after the finale and that Dexter is living under an assumed name, somewhere that isn't Miami. Of course, it wouldn't be the return of a beloved classic, well, 3 or 4 seasons of one anyway, without that aforementioned list of questions that are just nagging at us like a stepsister desperately trying to stop us from murdering criminals. What, is that not a problem for you guys? Anyway, let's dive in. Most important question first. Is he a good lumberjack? Oh, also, does he get caught? The latter is certainly the better question since the end of the limited series just has to have a definitive ending, and that could be that Dexter is finally forced to contend with jail time. Or maybe he goes down in a blaze of glory, shot and killed by, I don't know, bazooka? But really, we all want to know how good old Dex was at cutting down lumber. Ooh, maybe he's like Nicolas Cage in Mandy, and we just segue into a drug-fueled cult revenge plot? Shoot, I need to fire up my old fanfiction.net account right now. This leads to a side question: what will bring Dexter out of hiding? We have to assume that some conflict has to arise for him to relinquish his self-imposed banishment. Perhaps he witnessed a crime and decides to go after some jerk who's eluding the police, or just slips up, and with all that bloodlust built up inside of him, he needs to lash out at the first dingus who questions his chopping skills. Either way, that first push that leads Dexter into his latest, presumably blood-soaked adventure is going to have to be pretty solid to give fans the confidence they need to move on from Season 8. And that push is probably going to involve some cold-blooded you-know-what. So yeah, Dex still killing? Like, obviously he'll do some murder, it's 10 episodes of Dexter, there's gonna be some death. However, we might take some time to get there. Remember that Twin Peaks revival, aka the best limited series of all time, and how long it took to get some damn good Agent Cooper? Look, I love Dougie, we all love Dougie, but sometimes the heart wants what the heart wants, and we want to see Dexter saran wrap bad boys to a table and do the stabby stab, you know? Chances are the show will play a bit coy with us and string us out a bit, although with a subject so direct as serial killer what kills other criminals, it's only a matter of time before the dark passenger has his way. Me, I'm banking on the end of the first episode, but who knows what Clyde Phillips has planned and how sadistic he'll be with our expectations. Segue! What's the deal with Hannah and Dexter's son Harrison? Last we saw either of them, they were off to Argentina with literal murderer Hannah given single mom duty, which, big yikes. Likes to drug people. A lot of red flags. We're assuming Hannah didn't let mom rage get to her, and she probably didn't leave Harrison unattended next to any more gym equipment. So what's the dealio? Harrison would be a teenager by this point, so maybe it's time for a family reunion. After all, much like with Dexter's relationship with his stepdad Harry, there's no way that kid turned out normal. I don't trust him. As for Hannah, she can stay in Argentina, along with most other plot developments from seasons 6 through 8. And what about Rita's kids? Have they become killers like their stepdad? That storyline is explored in the books, so there's strong potential for a next generation of Dexter Morgans. My money is more on Harrison, though, being a major character, while Aster and Cody will probably be given a little lip service or maybe an episode for catching up. But the groundwork is there for some of that Bay Harbor Butcher energy to have rubbed off on them. After all, while Harrison was left to sit in his mother's blood in that emotionally jaw-dropping Season 4 finale, it's Rita's OG offspring who have had to contend with now 3 dead parents. That's heavy, man. That all said, does anyone really want to see those kids all grown up? At the end of the day, they're remnants of a past life that is best left a memory. IMO. Bringing it back to Dexter, how well known is the Bay Harbor Butcher? More specifically, has the connection been made between Dexter Morgan and his killer alias? In the show, this loose end was tied way back in Season 2 when Dexter framed James Stokes for all his undersea Vicks. This, of course, led to a whole bunch of drama with LaGuerta, which turned out fine? With well over a decade between the case's closure and now, could renewed interest in true crime play a role in reopening the Bay Harbor Butcher case? Could we wind up with a couple of annoying podcasters awakening the beast in Dexter a la Halloween 2018? Maybe they could use the security footage of Dexter stealing his sister's body from the hospital during Hurricane Laura. It's weird, no one batted an eye. Going back to the question of what brings Dexter out of hiding, it could be that the renewed interest in his blood-soaked past is what forces him out of hiding, either to cover his own butt for the 10,000th time or to escape police custody. After all, even lumberjacks watch the news. I assume. I've never actually met a lumberjack. They're not like the Amish, right? Wait, oh no, Cage had a TV in Mandy, so they watch the news. Now let's go back to Miami. How are the boys doing? You know, Angel Batista and Vince Masuka, the closest people in Dexter's professional life who aren't dead. David Zayas and C.S. Lee don't appear to have any huge work conflicts in the way of returning, so chances are good one, if not both, will return. The question is, in what capacity? Angel, of course, could see some redemption for his, quite frankly, being awful at judging character by being one of the cops after Dexter, assuming that's the direction the revival takes. I can't imagine he'd be the kind of person to side with Dexter, partially because any interaction with our homicidal hero would have to start with, "Hey Dex, how did you survive that hurricane, bro? Where you been, bud?" Of course, Dex has gotten out of more impossible situations, so who knows? Actually, that brings up a great question. How exactly did Dexter survive that hurricane? His boat was wrecked, and there was no clue as to how he could have managed such a daring escape. My guess is that he somehow just survived out of sheer luck, washed up on shore, and went on his merry way to the nearest career fair. Anyway, as for Vince, I like Masuka alright, but I'm good with him riding off into the sunset off screen. But what about Joey Quinn? Could he become Dexter's biggest downfall or a potential partner in crime? Last we saw Joey, he and Angel had let Dexter off for the killing of Oliver Saxon, who had shot Deb, ultimately causing her death. Now, sure, that was technically in self-defense, at least as far as Quinn could tell, maybe. But could Dexter's return lead to a new hiccup in this storyline, or will showrunner Clyde Phillips choose to ignore it in favor of a plotline that doesn't drive fans to physical violence? Another character whose whereabouts are of some interest to fans is Lumen Pierce. Her send-off was lame as all heck, and if there's one character who can sympathize with Dexter without, being awful like Hannah, it's Lumen. While on paper her arc was all wrapped up at the end of Season 5, many fans felt that it wasn't good enough for such a great character. Did she get the life she deserved? Or did all that murder not give her the emotional freedom she desired? And speaking of living people who know Dexter's secret, Jonah Mitchell, son of the Trinity Killer, is still out there. But we're not going to hold out hope on his coming back, since that connection was severed perfectly in the Season 6 episode, Nebraska. That episode built on Dexter's character quite a bit, and that leads us to another question. Has Dexter evolved emotionally, specifically in regards to Deborah's death? The series was always playing around with the potential for a more emotional Dexter, whose most notable characteristic, of course, was that he was meant to be an emotionless killer. As the seasons went by, however, this proved to not be entirely the case, and we learned that Dexter's claims of being an emotionless automaton were just not true. Not only did he obviously have some feelings for his adopted father and sister, he also showed remorse in the death of Vogel, and more famously, the brutal murder of Rita at the hands of the Trinity Killer in Season 4. His final act of compassion before noping out of parental responsibilities was to pull Deb's life support, an act that, while perhaps frustrating for viewers who just wanted good television and junk, at very least signaled that he had evolved substantially since Season 1. Dexter had more humanity in him than he allowed himself to believe, and that's kind of the whole point of his arc throughout the show. His murderous instincts are the result of trauma, which in turn led to a compulsion that was exacerbated by Harry's misplaced parental instincts. Of course, this is ScreenRant, not a college dissertation, but suffice it to say that while Dexter is definitely a serial killer and definitely has a few screws loose in the old morality department, there is plenty more to dig into when it comes to his more emotional side. Whether or not Phillips decides to explore that, we'll just have to wait and find out. Finally, will we see the return of former castmates to haunt Dexter? While plenty of the original cast of characters have shuffled off this mortal coil, that didn't stop others from returning to needle away at Dexter's noggin. Harry acted as Dexter's spiritual wingman for most of the show's run, and Brian appeared post-mortem to egg on his little brother. Deborah, Rita, LaGuerta, they could all make short cameos to remind Dexter of his failures. That wouldn't necessarily fit with the moral compass concept behind Harry and Brian, but hey, dude talks to figments of his imagination. Who's to say that imagination imagination hasn't become more twisted over time. Heck, I can think of at least one actor who might want to return for one last, very special, ghostly surprise. What Dexter questions do you need answered, Screen Ranters? Any you think my old man brain missed? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more pop culture-fueled rants and raves and speculations.